I'll get you zoomed in so you can see what's going on here. So I'm going to run a bead across here, and like I said, this is a titanium MiG 170 from Harbor Freight, and this has a auto weld feature. So what I'm going to do is squeeze the trigger and release, and it's going to automatically keep welding until I get to the end, and then I'll pull the trigger again to stop it. So using that feature, I found it does lay down a really nice weld. Let me pull this out of the tripod here. So it lays down a nice weld doing it that way. So I found it to be kind of handy in some situations. If you got a spot like that where you can do that all at one time, it works out pretty nice. Okay, I've got one side tacked in place. And this turned out pretty slick, I think. I'm really liking it. So what's going to end up happening, I used 1.5 by 3 tubing. So that new tubing's 1.5 by 3. I'm going to have to trim the bottom there, and then I'll fill that in with a piece. But what's going to happen here is, the really nice thing is I can still get up inside here, so I'll weld the inside of these joints as much as possible. I should be able to get the long one here without any trouble, and then I'm going to box this frame. So when I do the boxing plate, I'll run that back right along here, and I can weld it here and in the back, and that should really give good strength to that joint. So what I did to get these in place is I went ahead and clamped a flat bar to the frame, and I made sure that this piece that I clamped on was nice and straight. That's some 3/16 or 1/4 inch, it looks like. And then little interruption there. That means that my wife is home with dinner, so I'm going to head in and have some dinner. But I clamped that in, and then this piece works out really nice because as you lay it in place and clamp here, it can't really drop down because of the angle here. So it's clamped in place really, really well. And then what I did, the one thing here that's super important is to make sure that both of those sides are the same. So I took my square here, and I did check on both sides, and so I'm exactly the same height on both sides. Before I started welding over there, I did get a square and check that, so it is dead on. So I'm really excited about how that is all working out. And same thing here on the frame. When I cleaned up my edges, I went ahead and beveled those edges so I get good weld penetration along that outside edge. All right, supper time. Both of the rear drop downs are welded into place or tacked into place on the frame, and then I've just got the rear cross member clamped in. And before I start doing any welding, I've just been doing a lot of measuring. So I started with this distance here and made sure that this was the same on both sides. And what I had done is I had put a mark across here. I think we can see it better over here. So I had put a mark across when the cross member was just bolted into the frame. So it's been about 10 minutes of measuring, and I have the same distance here now. I have the same distance from the inside of the rail to the center of the cross member. And to get that measurement, I just took a big framing square. I put it away already, and I put the framing square on the side of the frame here, and then was able to bring it over and read it. And So that measurement's the same. And then I did several different cross measurements from middle back and front back. And I've got all those within a 1/16 of an inch from the front cross member to the rear cross member. And then again, a lot of these holes in the top of the frame, I had checked these before I got started, and these lined up really nice from side to side. And when I was putting that front cross member in, I used holes to do the measuring, and then I used the holes to do the cross pattern to make sure that I had that in square. So now it's going to be a matter of tacking that rear cross member into place. I did go ahead and clean up all around where I need to weld, so I'll tack that into place, and then I'll be able to take it back out into the driveway and put it back on the axles with the springs in place, and make sure that that's going to be the height that I'm looking for. This distance here right now, it looks a little weird having that stretch in there, but I'm running that 40-foot axle, and that's the spring behind the axle. It's not directly above, so it puts the axle up here in front. So when that's sitting on the axle, it'll look a lot better here in the back. But I think after doing a lot of research, looking at some videos of what other guys had done, I came to this style, and I think this really looks the best. Keep in mind that bump out down there is just my other T-bucket frame that I have flipped upside down using as my welding jig. So so that's just giving a weird illusion, but there you can see the way that Z section is going to look. I think that's going to be nice, and I think with having that 1.5 inches, and this is a thicker wall, and then like I said, when I do the boxing, I'll box this in and just run that boxing plate all the way back and down, so that'll end up getting sandwiched on there and welded, and that's going to give it'll be 6 inches of welding area almost, and I think that'll give good strength there. I think what I'll do is I'll kind of copy what they had for the actual Model A frame, and once I get these pieces tacked into place, I'll cut a triangle piece to go in here and weld that in place to give some added strength back here. So, and then I'm going to have a little cleanup to do. I cut some notches out of that lip when I was just doing my mock-up, and thinking I was going to use those, but kind of changed what I was doing for the plan. So I'll have to cut some pieces and fill that back in. But again, once it's all together, I don't think that's something people are really going to notice, but I guess I'll know it's there, so I'll go ahead and fill that in. So next step is going to be getting this thing tack welded, and then get it on the axles and make sure it's at the height that I want.